Hello and welcome to another episode of the Last Life Ever podcast. My name is Jeffrey Holst, and that is...
I'm Jillian Sidoti. Welcome, everyone.
Oh, Jillian, I'm super excited to have you here today. Anyway, so if you guys are watching live in the Facebook group, I apologize for us starting a couple minutes late. It's her fault. And anyway, listen, so we have an amazing guest today. Jillian, do you remember who we have on the show, or have you forgotten?
No. We have Karen Oeser.
It's Oeser, actually, but that was really close. Yeah, really close.
You can't spell your name Oeser and expect me to know how it's pronounced. I'm going to go.
That's totally fine. I asked her in advance when you weren't here. But listen, so let me tell you a little bit about Karen, and then we're going to bring her on, and she can tell you all about her. She does amazing things. I first met Karen actually at your multifamily war room event, where I found out shortly after that she spent like a year in South America during the mid-'80s, during all sorts of amazing and interesting historical periods throughout all of South America. And also, I learned that she does something called worship dancing. And I thought that was really interesting. And that's why I invited her to come on, so we could talk about traveling and worship dancing. And then
I think I have to do some worship dancing.
I think you do too.
I think it's like beyond praying, right? Like you got to move your body along with the silent meditation. Like I do a lot of meditation, a lot of sitting still in the moment, but I want to do some worship dancing.
So I have a thought on this, Jillian. Why don't we bring our guest on and she can tell us if you're right? Let's do that right after this.
Help me, my brother, can you lend me a hand as I walk through this land of confusion? If we give to each other, then there's nothing to take. Let's live life for the moment before it slips away.
Hey, Karen, did I say your name right, or did I get it wrong still?
You got it right.
Yay! See that?
It's such a great name because, in fact, when I first got into sales, I was petrified to get into sales. And then I realized I have the best name ever because it's guaranteed conversation and everybody remembers my name.
That is so cool. That is such a great. So when you say when you got into sales, and this isn't even what we're talking about, but I find it fascinating that you said that. I find it fascinating that you were afraid because you've done so many amazing things. And you mentioned that you're afraid to get into sales. What made you get into sales, and what kind of sales were you into?
Well, one thing when I realized life is sales, at the end of the day, you're always selling something. So, but the direct answer to that question is when I first got into the investment business, I was on the sell side. So I actually was doing institutional sales, and here I was, and it's actually very funny. I like everybody to know that, I've had this vision for going into finance and everything, but the way I got into the investment business was when I got out of college, I had actually self-designed a major called Women in Economic Development. And, but I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with that. So I got a headhunter out of school, and they came up with a couple cool jobs. One was to be in charge of sales at Butterball Turkey, or to work for a brokerage firm. And Butterball Turkey was offering about 3 times the amount of money.
So you sold turkeys?
No. I actually, something in me said, you know what? I just don't see me selling Butterball the rest of my life. So I think I'll go down the brokerage route. So obviously that's how I got down on this path.
Fair enough. All right. So we in the introduction I mentioned that how I met you at a multifamily war room event, so we know that you're interested in multifamily investing, which is awesome. But what I was most intrigued about was you're talking about worship dancing, and right before we started the show you started telling us what that is. So why don't you tell the audience what you mean by worship dance?
Well, worship dance is, that's just kind of my prayer language. Some people meditate, some people read the Bible, some people, just pray. And for me, I find myself being at most free when I'm dancing. And I actually didn't even know that it was a thing. And I went to a women's conference. It was about 3.5 years ago now. And, they were playing the music. Then all of a sudden there were a bunch of women that were dancing. For me, I really didn't even consider myself much of a dancer. I spent a lot of time in my basement with Dancing with the Stars, but to be able to dance with the Lord and be able to really communicate what's on my heart. And because I'm a writer, so I'm a word lover. And so I was really able to combine my love of the word, the word, the Bible, as well as word as the linguistic word, as well as putting that into interpretive dance. And then it was an amazing experience. But then eventually I realized, because I was at one point, with my Lyme disease, I was in a wheelchair and I couldn't speak. And they didn't know what was wrong with me. They thought I was losing my mind. My body, my body became emaciated. And that was around the time that I learned about worship dancing. And I actually just found amazing healing with it. And 18 months after that, I became completely asymptomatic with Lyme disease.
Hold on a second, back up, because I have maintained to multiple people that, to me, Lyme disease is one of the silent killers. And I don't mean like it actually kills you physically, it kills your soul.
It does.
It kills you like mentally. I'm from the Northeast. And so being from the Northeast, you actually know more people. I don't know, Karen, where you live, but to me, knowing people who live in like the Northeast or rural parts of the Midwest, more people who have Lyme disease that's actually undiagnosed. They think they're just getting tired or lazy or fat or whatever. They have a cold or they have allergies or whatever. And the next thing they know, they have stage 4 Lymes. And it's terrible.
That's exactly happened to me. So I live in South Carolina. And so I'd been in a horrific car accident in August of 2014. And I had contusions on 7 of my vertebrae. And I was on bed rest for 12 weeks. And then I got through that therapy. And, then I got into December and I was doing fine. I thought, this is great. And then January, I was driving my kids home to their dad's house and I was lost. I didn't know where I was. I couldn't get home. My 7-year-old had to get me home.
Wow.
And then I lost my language. But the crazy thing is they kept sending me to a psychiatrist and telling me that I was losing my mind. And they couldn't figure out what was going on with me. And as you probably know, with Lyme disease, nothing shows up on a blood test. You show up normal on everything. And so what they think had happened to me is that when I was in a car accident, that I had latent Lyme, and that the trauma of the wreck actually is, my immune system went on strike. And that's when it came out. And then the way I was diagnosed is a friend of mine, she had a son who was experiencing the same things. And she put something on Facebook about it. And so she then called me and, heard what was going on. She's like, I think you have Lyme disease. And so she actually, she arranged for a flight for me to fly up to Connecticut. Because of course, especially, just 5 years ago, Connecticut was one of the few places that they actually could, find somebody who could diagnose it. And then they find
Northeast, tons of deer, tons of ticks.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a teenager, I had a tick on my neck overnight.
Yep.
I was terrified, even as a teenager, that I might have Lyme's disease. And I mean, I knew people who had Lyme's disease even at that age that were horribly affected by it. So yeah, tell us about that. So you went and got diagnosed?
Yeah. So I lived in Boston for 17 years and I was an avid outdoors person. I was always in the woods, always outside. So I had so many opportunities to have it. I never had the bullseye or any of the telltale signs. And most people who have chronic Lyme, that's how it happened. It's been latent in their body and they have some sort of trauma and it shows up 5-10 years later.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. So
wow. So you got to this point where you couldn't speak?
I lost a lot of my words. And in fact, you know what candida is?
Yeah. Yeast.
Yeah, yeast. So I would have to write words all over my bedroom to talk to people because I kept telling them that I had chlamydia. Because I got all my words mixed up. I had dyslexia. I had all this going on, but miraculously, I never lost my ability for relationships. And so I never lost my ability to think strategic, but I couldn't count. You know, when I played games with my kids, they had to count the squares for me. And, you know, I'm a CFA. That was kind of a very humbling experience.
That is crazy. I mean, there's so much there that, I mean, wow. Okay. So how did you treat the Lyme's disease? I mean, obviously the worship dance is a huge part of it, but let's talk about, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, well, there really weren't any treatments. So what I did is I ended up, you cobble together all these protocols. And if you basically do the cancer protocol, the alternative cancer protocol. So I was getting IV infusions, and that was the primary route that I took. And then they have something called the Gerson method.
Oh yeah, I'm very familiar with that because that's a San Diego thing. Why don't you explain to people what the Gerson method is?
Yeah. So the Gerson method it's an alternative cancer therapy. It was Dr. Gerson, I believe, is in New Mexico, is where it originated, and so that's when you're doing all greens. You're doing and they have all sorts of different protocols. I had 13 things I was doing at once because I got colon cancer too. So I got it all. So it all happened at once, but I kind of got a twofer because the Lyme and the cancer were the same treatment. So I was doing my Lyme and then I did the second round of it for the cancer. But so you do IV therapy. You do lots of coffee enemas. You do all juicing. Let me tell you, that's fun stuff. And you do that, and then I also was doing infrared saunas, and then you do whatever you can to take any kind of pressure you can off your kidneys and your liver because they're just overtaxed.
Uh-huh.
And then let me see, there are so many other things that I did. You know, I was basically on a liquid diet for 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you starving or did you feel fine? Did you lose a ton of weight?
Well, I'd already lost a ton of weight, but I didn't lose more weight after that. You know, I got down to 89 pounds.
Ooh.
Yeah. Whoa. Yeah. But once the cancer had passed and then we were just treating the Lyme, I slowly got my weight, and I've just accelerated the last 12 months. So I'm now back to my original weight. So
I like how once the cancer passed, as if it was like the flu.
Yeah, exactly.
That was cute. That was cool. Right, Jeff?
I mean, if it worked for her, I'm happy for it.
Yeah.
Like, you haven't been quite that lucky yet. Maybe one of these days.
That the cancer passes. I'm fascinated. Okay, so now tell us. So you did all of this treatment, treating cancer, treating Lyme's. Now you're still like dealing with the Lyme's. How did you know this is what's confusing to me. You have all these things going on. How did you know, like, okay, the cancer's passed and now I'm dealing with just Lyme's? How did you know that?
Because Well, I have a doctor who actually has a Lyme scale, so they can actually, it's a scale of 1 to 20.
Okay.
So I'm not free of Lyme, but anything under a 5, you're asymptomatic. So I go right now between sometimes up to a 7, but like 20, you're on your deathbed. So when I was at my sickest, I was at a 19.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And so I go to him monthly. He's an applied kinesiologist. So I don't, for those who aren't familiar with what they do muscle testing. So, and in fact, this doctor is the one who is able to diagnose almost everything that I've struggled with, chlamydia, candida, all of that he was able to test. So once a month I go, and he checks to see, because I'm immune compromised. So he goes to check to see if there's anything that is flaring up, so what a lot of people find out with Lyme, and it's not, with you have fibromyalgia, you have, all of these autoimmune disorders out there, but most of them are a chronic underlying infection that people don't know about. And so you often treat them the same, but what happens is you become allergic to everything. So that's why a lot of times you end up with an applied kinesiologist, and you get a very limited diet in which you can have. And so the last year it hasn't been so bad. I'm on pretty much a regular diet. I just eat smartly now. But before, it was literally 1 month I would lose my eggs, and then I would get peanut butter, and then I'd have only eat almond butter, and then it's all sorts. It was very, very, a very specialized diet that you end up having to get on. And with Lyme, that's what most people are. They and sugar, no sugar. Sugar feeds everything. So, and for me, in fact, the first time that I had sugar, because one of the ways it also expressed itself for me is I got neuropathy. So at one point I couldn't hold anything. I couldn't hold my knife. I had to have people cut my food for me. And so for me, when I know I'm flaring, my hands start getting stiff, and they start hurting, and they feel, because it basically feels like pins and needles 24/7 in all your hands. And so for me, I can tell if there's sugar in something, because my hands will start tingling.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a crazy life.
But just to be clear, so you went from being bound, wheelchair bound, right, at the worst point, to worship dancing. And I'm assuming that's not something you do in a wheelchair.
No, you don't. However, we actually do this with a lot of it's for both men and women, but I have a few friends who actually go to the retirement homes with the old ladies and have them doing worship dancing just with their arms. And it's very healing. So there was a year's lag between the whole diagnosis and then when I became actually in the full worship dancing. I got exposed to it early on, but then once I really was able to start moving and start being more free, that's when it really started to kick in. And then I decided to join, there's a school called Dancing for Him Ministries. And so I actually decided to join the school, and I became a licensed instructor the first year. And then last year I became a licensed minister. So I'm a licensed minister of dance now.
Didn't even know that existed, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but most people don't, and so, and one of the, I was telling Jeffrey earlier on that I never really did this for public consumption. I just did it for my own. But then, I'd record, I kind of feel led to record something. Then I'd send something to a friend, and they're like, "Can I share this with one of my friends?" Then it would just, start kind of virally going around. And so right now, I'm I have a YouTube station called Living in His Imagination, Not Ours. But I've recorded in several different places, and so I've traveled to England, and I've done some dancing over there. And and then I've been part of a few dance troupes that are around the globe as well. So, it's just, I was part of a dance montage it was around September-ish. And I sent that video to somebody, and she said that that got me through the day. And like I said, I was just minding my own business. I mean, I really wasn't trying to do it. And so that's, one of these days when you're worship dancing, you're worshiping for an audience of one, so it's just kind of you kind of dancing for the Lord. But it's just, it's just kind of like this really cool thing that happens, and it just brings me to peace every day. And, that's what I do every morning. I wake up really early. I, do my Bible study, I do my worship dance, and then I have all the energy. That's another, I get tons of energy from it. It just really, really, lights me up, and it seems whatever problems I actually have, the place I dance is upstairs, and I have a family room above the garage, and so all my friends call it my upper room. So so I go and dance up there. I have the window open, and it just is a great way to start the day.
The video you sent us is absolutely beautiful. And is there a methodology to this? Is this something that people can practice at home? Is it something they just feel like? Is there like the Holy Spirit that comes down, or some other thing? Tell us about that.
Yeah, those are great questions. Actually, anybody can do it. In fact, one of the big things I often tell people is the group I'm involved with in England is called Movement and Worship, because the whole idea is you don't have to necessarily be a dancer, because biblically, the Hebrew word for dance is actually to move. And so literally, if you're just going into prayer position, you're dancing. That's a movement. So it's kind of whatever the movement is to you. You sing, you praise. That's, it's the same word for it. And so, it's just, some people are just really moved by music, and you just can't stop moving. And so that's how I am when I hear music. I just start moving, and I just feel really connected to it. And literally, it's just like God and I when I dance. It's just like literally there's nobody else around. And so it literally is like God and I dancing. And, which is so healing. And, and a lot of people think, well, do I have to be a dancer to do it? And they act, no, that's a good thing. God doesn't care. He really doesn't care. He smiled when I was, doing Dancing with the Stars downstairs in my, basement, thinking that I was all that. And he actually thinks I'm cool and I'm a beautiful dancer.
So this reminds me so much of when I was a kid, and my parents used to drive us up to, one of these, not suburbs, but one of these outer city areas of Boston, Everett. You might know, Karen.
Oh, I know Everett. Yeah.
So Everett's not like, well, back in the day, I don't know now, but back in the day, Everett wasn't like the greatest location in Boston. It was kind of trashy.
Yep.
No offense, anybody. But my grandfather and my extended family would go to an Episcopalian church there that was not very well attended. I mean, literally, we're talking Christmas Eve Mass, and my family made up half the congregation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, really not well attended. Just the nature of the neighborhood, just the nature of the game. And my grandfather used to sing really loudly, off key. And I remember just being like so embarrassed by this. And I don't know if it was my dad or my mom or somebody said to me, God doesn't care.
He was making a joyful noise unto the Lord.
Yeah. So I just, you saying that makes me remember that, and how, like, absolutely, it just doesn't matter. Just do it. Just have that moment. That is absolutely, I'm going to try this. This is really cool.
Go. Oh yeah. And you definitely have to let me know how it goes, because the thing about it is, at first you just sit there and you get in your head a little bit about it, but literally when they say you're an audience of one, it's just, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. And before you know it, you're dancing to 2 or 3 songs. And, and like you said, you don't even know if you look awkward. You don't even care if you're awkward.
Because it's just you and God, right? Like,
exactly.
Right, because God doesn't care. And
but wait, Jillian, you are planning on streaming this live in the group, right? When you try this.
I wish you all saw, and those of you that watch the podcast, I wish you just saw the look I gave Jeffrey, Mr. Jeff. Jeff, No, but I will not stream it live. That is going to be between me and the Holy Spirit. And, but I think
this in very unique
it's awesome because one of the things we just gave our viewers as a tip to have a better morning is to stretch. Well, what better way to stretch than to, you know, have some kind of worship dance?
Absolutely. And again, and then I mean you'll find even if you're stretching to worship music, I mean it's cleansing. You really feel cleansed every time. And like I said, 6 months after I danced, it was like, what's the only, you know, because I was doing my same protocols. I'm like, what was the X factor, you know, because what took me down, you know, because I was at a pretty much a 12, and then I went down to a 3 for over a year. And the only thing I did differently was dance.
Wow. That's amazing.
And then what I would do when I got more energy, then I, you know, one of the things I do is, you know, I work at the women's trauma center and, you know, the rehabs and all of that. And, you know, and so they call me and they ask me like, can you please dance with these girls? Because after you dance, there's just something that happens and it just something clicks in them. And they feel seen. And, you know, because I go and I bring you know, because I dance with scarves, I dance with flags, you bring lots of instruments, you make it really fun and very unintimidating. Because the other thing I do, you know, because the one dance that, you know, I sent you is a little bit more of a serious dance, but I also do goofy dances too. I mean, people think God is so serious and Mr. Judgmental. And it's like, you know what? We're back there and we are, you know, we're skipping, we're jumping. I mean, some of the silliest things that we do. And it's like, you know, we're a piece of him. So he gave us our humor. He gave us, you know, he gave us our silliness, and he tells us to be the children of God, and I take him at his word. So I'm silly.
Well, I love that. And let me tell you why, because I was just going to make a comment like, Jeff, I can't do this live because I'll just make a joke of it. Like, I won't take it. If I'm doing it in front of other people, that's when it will become not so serious. It will become very unserious, very goofy, very whatever. But I think I'm actually going to, Jeff, tomorrow during our morning, Jeff and I do a daily video where we're doing this thing called the Just One Challenge, where all we have to do is put on our workout clothes and walk outside. We have no other obligation. We don't have to walk. We don't have to run. We don't have to do anything. So we've been keeping each other accountable by doing a video every morning. Well, Jeff, I'm going to go outside tomorrow and I'm going to do a worship dance tomorrow on our video. How about that?
That sounds amazing, and I'll just keep walking.
Listen, do a little skippity scap.
But listen, I just learned from Karen that my walking can be a worship dance because any movement counts. So as long as I keep walking, we're good.
Absolutely. In fact, you know, the group that I'm involved with in England, Movement and Worship, you know, it's more than half of them are men on the group. And that's what they do. They go out and kind of march for the Lord, you know.
Well, I'll tell you, there is, particularly for me, I mean, and I think I might have shared this with you, Karen, when we talked before, but I never had any exposure to worship dance other than one time I saw a Sufi worship trance thing where like the whirling dervishes. I saw that, and that, you know, obviously a little bit different, but a similar concept. But for me, when I was climbing by myself in the middle of the night at Kilimanjaro last winter, I mean, there's something extremely spiritual about just being out and doing something that involves just connecting with the earth, connecting with the creation. And I can't really describe it. I wish I could describe it more, but there's something very moving about that. And I think that's really what you're tapping into. That's
exactly describes what I feel when I'm moving. And like I said, I do everything from super serious, you know. I had, you know, a family crisis that was going, you know, the other week. And so, you know, I did the wailing dance as well, you know, so you can do everything from wailing to just being grateful, you know, going through all the different emotions, just expressing peace. You know, sometimes I'll just sit there and like, wow, I'm a nature girl, so I see the Lord in like all of creation. It just, I love nature, and and so just my backyard is actually the shape of the United States. And so like when we were at one of our hardest, well, like as if we're not in vitriol right now politically, but one of the things I did is I actually just danced peace over our country. It's kind of like in the spirit all over my backyard, and just like, it's actually making me teary, but it's like, that's something I can do. That's something I can do and have the power in this nuttiness. And, whatever I can put out into the atmosphere, bringing peace to other people. What a great gift, and to connect. And if, and I get some great, and my backyard's so big, I get a lot of exercise doing it at the same time. So.
Of course, I'm not sure if you need too much exercise if you're just eating kale shakes all day long. Like, I don't know. I thought that was like an inoculation against exercise, so you didn't have to do it anymore. But I mean, seriously, I do think there's something incredibly moving about what you're doing. And having watched the video, which people can see on your YouTube page, what was the YouTube page? What was the YouTube page again?
And it's called Living in His Imagination.
Right. Okay. And I think so. And we'll put that in the show notes too when we do post it. Post the show. But yeah, for sure, the YouTube page. There's several videos up there. And you said that you just started a new YouTube page, so it's pretty new in the process. You only have 4 or 5 videos, but I thought it was really fascinating to watch some of that, and all set to music and very emotional, really. So that's really great stuff. So tell us. So you were telling me off the air that you felt like this healed you and that it was healing for other people. Are there any examples that you can give us of people other than maybe the people you just talked about, the women's what was it was I'm drawing a mental blank here, but the people that were going through rehab and stuff like that. Are there other examples of that in your life?
Yeah. I mean, there's several examples, and like I said, you can, how you pray for other people. I dance for other people. So there's several people, even somebody in my own family who is dealing with complete total trauma, just gripped with fear. I danced for her for a year, and you would know she's walking in total utter peace now. And and one of the coolest like immediate experiences I had is my stepdad was dealing with macular degeneration, and one of his eyes just kind of went out, and he was feeling really, really depressed. And I was out visiting them last summer, and this was kind of like a new thing. And I didn't really, because it wasn't until about a year ago that I actually went public with this in any capacity. It's just kind of my thing I did on the side. And so I was in my mom's kitchen, and all of a sudden I started dancing. And I didn't tell her what I was doing, just other than dancing. And all of a sudden my stepdad yells, he's like, "I can see out the window now." And my mom looked at me and she's like, "You just danced for him, didn't you?" And I said, yeah, that's what I did. It's pretty powerful stuff. I mean, it's the coolest thing, but it's no different than praying. It's just that's my language. That's how I communicate with God, and I try to help out others.
Yeah, that's amazing stuff. So, so I have a question then. So you've been doing this for a while, and then you told me there's like worship dance conventions.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know this was a thing until like last month or whatever when you mentioned it to me, and so I'm excited to have you on and talk about this. But is it really that big that there's like whole conventions of people doing this stuff?
Well, I don't want to over exaggerate it, but it's getting bigger and bigger. There are conventions. I maybe conferences would be a better word to describe them than conventions. But because Americans tend to be, a little more Baptist. or Catholic, that it doesn't feel very comfortable doing something like that. So it's not as big in this country, but it's really big outside of the US, so I'm involved in groups all around the globe. And in fact, it's actually kind of a cool story. The way I found this group in England was I had a dream that there was this group in England to go visit, and I just felt compelled to go meet them. And so I woke up the next morning and bought a plane ticket and went to go visit the group.
Wait, hold on. So you didn't know anything about them. You just dreamed about them and you went. That's the second time we've heard a story like that on the show. Jillian might recall this.
With Alicia.
Yes, Alicia Thomas was on, and she talked about how she was getting on a subway train in New York when she was visiting, and a homeless person told her she should move to New York. And so she just moved to New York, just randomly, out of the blue. And she just felt like that was it was like a message to her. And that's really what you're talking about. So that's fascinating.
Yeah. So I contacted that. I had this dream about, and then somebody had told me about the name of a contact. So I looked them up, I Googled them, bought the ticket. And then after I bought the ticket, I texted them or emailed them and told them that I was coming. I went there without a place to stay or anything to do. And I'm just like, okay, this may sound crazy, but my life is pretty crazy. And, and ever since those health crises, I kind of live this back half, as the great adventure anyway. And so I went over there, and so they had an event that they're having over that weekend. And so as I was walking around this place, there were all the places I had seen in my dream. And it was just like, okay, well, I guess I'm meant to be here.
Yeah, that's crazy. I haven't had any dreams that were that specific. Although we did talk to a dream interpretation person once, where I shared about my dream about Jillian and I hunting vampires in a Blockbuster. But I don't think that's ever coming true. I just have to believe that, one, there are no vampires, and two, there are no Blockbusters. So that one's probably not going to happen.
The way of the vampires.
But speaking of crazy, so we, the original thing, I kind of teased this at the beginning of the show. This isn't the only thing you do. You do a lot of other amazing things, and we'll let you, before we end, tell us a little bit about some of the other stuff you do. But one thing that I thought was really crazy about your story is you spent a year in South America. Tell us about that. When was that?
Yeah, so that was in 1988, 1989. I hitchhiked across South America as a 19-year-old.
Wait, by yourself?
With 6 other people. It was kind of a quasi Peace Corps type of group. They're based out of Denmark. It's called Institute for International Cooperation and Development. So we traveled through the Spanish-speaking countries. Then we lived in northern Brazil and built a school. But we literally hitchhike across. So what we do is we go to the major cities in each country. So we went to Uruguay, Paraguay, Argentina, Chile, Peru, Bolivia, and then we lived in Brazil. And so we would start out in each city, and then we would decide to go out to the countryside, and then meet in the next country, in the next big city, and then we'd mix up who we were traveling with. So we traveled in 2s and 3s, and our whole thing is that was when all the countries were transitioning from dictatorship to democracy. So we were kind of doing some investigations in each city, and it just so happened each one of the countries that we were there, they were actually having their elections, and so we were there to experience that the first time. And it was pretty crazy, because Pinochet in Chile, that was a very, very long dictatorship, and I was there for Patricio Aylwin's first, his being elected for the first Democratic president. And, but we were being tear gassed in the streets, and it was some crazy times. And then, one of my favorite story from my time in South America is the fact that I actually hitchhiked in the back of a wheat truck across the country of Uruguay.
Yeah, that's
Oh my God.
yeah, so to do something like that at 19 years old is just crazy. I mean, listen, I've traveled a fair amount, but when I was 19, I don't know that I'd ever been out of the country except for to Canada, and then only because I live like 5 minutes away. I'm exaggerating a little. It was like 2 hours, but it wasn't very
Yeah,
far to Canada.
yeah,
And then we only went there because the drinking age was 19 in Canada, so we would
right,
go
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Like, that's the only reason I'd even been to Canada, I think, when I was 19. Oh, I mean, we had traveled a little bit in the Canadian Rockies before that, but that must have been quite an experience. And I gotta feel like it must have put some stress on your family to know that
Oh
you were.
especially now that I have a 19-year-old son, I cannot even fathom what I put my mother through. I mean, she gets she gets a gold star for what she did. And even worse yet is because she and I were always very close. And so I told her I'd write her letters. And then I very quickly realized I'm a big journal writer. So I said, I don't have time to write my journal, write her letters. So I'll just write, she'll be my journal. So I'm like, hey, Mom, I was just tear gassed in Chile. Well, we didn't have internet then. That was a letter that was like 4 weeks old. She didn't know if I actually made it out because we didn't have that kind of communication. And here I was a 19-year-old like, hey, it's fun. I'm having a great time. And so, if my son told me he would do what I did, I don't know. I'd probably kill him. But, it's, clearly I have an adventuresome spirit. So, that I got myself in a lot of trouble as a young kid with that too.
Yeah. So, all right. So I think if there's a theme for your life, it's that you're just doing whatever you're feeling called to do. You're trying to live the best version of your life, which is a very last life ever sort of thing. So we really appreciate that. And I know you're in the group as well, which we appreciate. So before we wrap up here, I want to ask you just a little bit about something else you were telling me about, which is something you recently just started, which was your financial literacy for women program that you're rolling out. So tell us about that really briefly, and then we're going to wrap up because we actually are almost done. This time
wow,
super fast.
Yeah. So, and this goes all the way back to that original, my graduate thesis, which was women in economic development. So, that's always something I've been very passionate about, is about helping women, helping women in need, and also just looking for unique ways to be able to lift other people up. And, so I started this program called Financial Literacy for Her. I've got some big people starting to back me already. The Association for Financial Education, they're one of my big backers already. And so the whole idea is that we want to be able to, teach financial literacy, and everything from the people that can't rub two pennies together all the way to people that are very, that are accredited investors and don't know what to do with their money, because it's financial literacy. It's just what you do with it, and where they are in their lives, how you educate them, and what they do with it. So one of my ideas is that, so it's a coaching program where you have your one-on-one coach that will get you through wherever you're at, and it's 5 steps. It starts out with people with basic budgeting. The next one is new habit formation. And then the third level is where you have the mindset shift. And that's where, you're going from debt, consumer debt, and debt as a crutch, to debt as a source for investment. So one of my big things is there's a lot of people with financial literacy, there's so many tools right now to use, wealth, to use debt very creatively to make a lot of money. But if you are not a good steward of your money, and you have not had that shift where you can be responsible with your debt, you could really get some people into trouble. And that's one area that I was seeing a hole there, saying, there's both sides to it. And, and then obviously, being in the multifamily, lots of people want to be into multifamily, and that is one of the best sources of long-term wealth. But also, if you've been, if you have a lot of wealth, there's also other areas to put your money into, which is, charitable causes, or, to pay for entrepreneurial ventures. Especially for me, I like to go to the entrepreneurial ventures to fund women's companies. And there are lots of other avenues. And the other big thing with this program is, and this kind of goes back to my faith as well, is that, everybody has a calling. And I don't want to place a judgment on what your calling is and therefore what your finances are with that, because, a stay-at-home mom has just as much value as a multi-billionaire businesswoman. And our society, has put so much emphasis on it's all about the wealth. But, look at me, I had all this wealth and I was almost dying, so, I can't take that with me. And so really getting to know, spending a lot of time on the self-development and what help women become the best you can and the best steward of your wealth for where you are and what you're called to do in your life. And obviously with, the women that have a little, have more finance, hopefully I'm creating a scholarship fund so that they can, so this can be a self-funding model. And, my dream is the people that went from 1 go to 5s. And so not only will you have the one-on-one coaching, but then you'll have a accountability group, because women are collaborative, very collaborative, and they want to, they tend to want to work with each other, and they usually don't want men around to talk about a lot of these vulnerable issues. So it's a safe place for women to come and learn about finance. So it's called Financial Literacy for Her.
Well, I think that is an amazing mission, and I hope that you're able to get it off the ground and do all of those things that you want. If people want to reach out to you, you told me that the best way for them to get a hold of you is just to email you at Karen@eastlightinvest.com, Karen@eastlightinvest.com. So if you're watching on the show, that's on the screen, but if you're watching or listening later, it might not be. So anyway, Karen, is there anything else you want to share with us before we let you go?
No, well, thank you so much for having me. And Jillian, I expect a video.
Tomorrow, I'm going to be dancing down the street.
I'm holding you to that. I am your accountability partner after all.
Jillian needs worship more than anything in life right now.
I know, Jillian.
It will calm your soul.
You
so however I get closer to God, I'll do it.
So maybe you should just start dancing right now.
Tomorrow.
Okay. All right. We'll allow it. I will allow that. And Karen, thank you so much for coming on. Maybe we'll get a chance to talk to you more in the future. You are welcome to participate in the group at any level that you want. We really are glad you're there. And I know that there will be lots of questions. This video will remain in the group for a while. So if you see any questions on there from people, you can answer them. Feel free to do that.
Glad to be part of your club now. Thank you.
We're glad to have you. Thanks so much for coming on. Jillian, is there anything that you want to say before we go to the short break?
Everybody stick around for our short break, because Jeff and I have some jokes and some things, and we're going to talk about some stuff.
We're going to do all that stuff right after this.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you real soon.
Go!
Everybody,
hey.
We just had that awesome interview with Karen, and then Jeff and I made the terrible mistake of having a private conversation.
That was amazing, right? It was.
Yeah.
We were talking about Karen and about life in general, and we solved all the world's problems, and now it's forever gone because we didn't record it.
Yeah, like Jeff and I usually do on our talks. We solve the world's problems, and one of the things we talked about is the humility of some people, right? And just like how, this dancing is way of humbling yourself towards God, but then also like just humbling yourself towards whomever you meet.
We were really talking about how almost all of our favorite guests, some of them are actually pretty famous, some big deals, but the ones that we like the most were like, they were just normal people and they didn't think of themselves as a big deal. Right. We might have thought of them as a big deal, but like if you think of somebody like Frank McKinney, right, objectively more famous than Jillian Sidoti and Jeffrey Holst.
Best-selling author.
Right.
Been on Oprah.
Right. And multiple best-selling author, not like 1 or 2 books, but like a lot of them, right? 7, I think at last count. But he did write for the Coronavirus Collective. So that kind of makes us associated with him. Just a little bit, but anyway, so, but I mean, people like that, or like Reverend Nicky Gumbel, who's like, he's a pretty big deal too. And like, you wouldn't know it from talking to him. He would definitely not think of himself as a big deal. Those people that we love, are doing things to humble themselves, to recognize. I mean, I think like, I remember Nikki Gumbel telling us how honored he was to be on our show. And we had like 3 episodes at that point or something.
No, and
we had like 2 viewers.
Who is the gentleman? I'm so sorry I forget his name, but he was so awesome. And he was like friends with Jack Canfield and run all these
Dr.
companies.
Jim White, right? He thanked us for having us on him on our show.
Oh, and he was so excited to be on our show. Before we started the show, told us like, what you guys are doing is so important. And then complimented our intro video, was just so humble and kind. And the
guy's got like $1 billion in sales and has like millions of businesses that he started. He's like the real life Marcus Lemonis. Not that Marcus is not real. You're welcome to come on the show, Marcus. But I mean, because we know that every time I mention someone, they're a big fan of the show. That's the only reason I mention them. Right. So Marcus, you're welcome to come on the show.
But I think I actually it just reminded me that, you know, talking to Karen. And all of these people have the same thing. They've done these big things, and Karen has done these big things.
And it's like no big deal. Like I just went
I overcame cancer and Lyme's at the same time. No big deal. And I just
and I got myself out of a wheelchair by doing spiritual dancing. I mean, like worship dancing to get out of a wheelchair. Like, I mean, that's kind of impressive, right?
I'm a perfect able-bodied human being, and I can't get out of bed in the mornings.
Oh, yes, you can. Every once in a while, after I call you 10 times, you get up and walk outside.
That's true.
In fairness, if I had to get up 3 hours earlier when you wanted to walk, it would be hard for me to get out of bed in the morning too. Because like you do have that 3-hour time change. Between us. I do. Like when I want to walk,
Jeffrey, I have adult acne, which I want to really talk about.
We can't really see it. Is it stress related, do you think? Yeah, you covered it up pretty well.
I covered it up pretty good because I didn't want to be distracted. I was big and red and bulbous. But I just want to discuss this with all of our audience members. How unfair is it that you get adult acne? I don't. Like, there should be a law against acne after you're 40. I mean, that's really not fair.
There is a law against it. You're breaking the law. So not only do you have acne, but you're now a criminal.
Oh, that's swell.
Hey, speaking of criminals, did you bring a joke for us today? Because you did promo that you had a joke. You were like, we have jokes for after the break.
Yes, I did.
Well, by the way, did you see the description I put for this? I put Karen outro, and then I said, where we talk about Karen. And then I said, that sounds really crazy, but it's true. Or something like that.
Okay.
You know, because Karen's a thing. Like, when did that become a thing where like everyone was a Karen? Like, was that this year? Is that a thing that happened this year?
I don't think that happened this year. I think it's been around and it's become a thing, but I don't like it. I
don't like it either. It bothers me too, actually. I think it's really...
I don't ever call anybody a Karen because I find it offensive.
I always call them Jillians. I don't really do that. I don't. I'm just kidding. I really don't. I promise. I love how big our audience is right now. There's 0 people watching. So apparently talking about Karen made everyone go away. They were like, oh. By the way, Karen, if you're watching, which you're not because we can see who's watching, because we know everything. I don't know if you guys know this, but when we film the show, if you don't cover up your webcam like this, we can actually see into your house.
Stop that. Don't tell people that. Then people really won't watch, even though people are really not watching right now.
We really can't, I promise, especially if you don't watch it live.
I have a joke. Ooh.
Is it a really good joke or is it kind of dumb?
It's a decent joke. I feel like it's a decent joke.
Okay, cool.
How do you make a tissue dance?
You put a little boogie in it. I've heard that joke before. That's not exactly new. But that is a dance joke. I went with a completely different theme. I went with the Pinochet theme.
So she was in South America. Okay.
Yeah. Well, she brought up the fact that she was traveling and in fact was in Chile at the time that Pinochet sort of ended his reign, if you will. So what do Augusto Pinochet and the new version of Guns N' Roses have in common?
Good Lord, what?
They've both, get this. Are you ready for that? Are you ready for it? Are you like, you can't guess? You can't guess what they have in common?
No, what?
I'm really dragging this out. They have both committed atrocities in South American auditoriums.
I don't want to tell you how wrong that is, but that's pretty wrong.
It's really wrong. It's like beyond wrong, but it's at least not a snot joke.
That's true. My joke was pretty bad. Well, everybody, this has been fun. I just want to give everybody advice that I will take myself is to dance your way to heaven, number one. And number two, always show a little humility. And other than that, Jeffrey, what do we want to remind people to do?
Well, I want to tell another story really quick, and then I'll remind them of what to do. So it occurred to me while we were interviewing Karen that I've only done like 3 artistic things in my life. Like, I mean, I've written things like fiction, as we know, but I've only done like 3 like hands, like sculpture, painting, stuff like that. One was I made a little clay sculpture and I thought it was pretty cool. But there was one thing I did that was calligraphy. And what I wrote in calligraphy was this quote, "I am the Lord of the dance," said he. Right. And then I had these little dancing figurines that I drew on there. And I kind of wish I had found that before our interview so I could have held it up like this. I just wanted to bring that up. That I failed miserably in preparing for our interview. And with that, I want to tell you that the way that you don't fail miserably when preparing for your interview or for your life is to remember that you only live once. And you know what that means, Jillian?
Remember to live your last
No,
life.
No, that's not it at all. Let me try this. What you're supposed to say is this. We're reminding you to live the best version of your last life ever. Wow, we're really bad at that. You should probably just play the end music.
Everybody have a great week. I'll talk to you soon.
Never gonna take my freedom. You're never gonna take my pride. Just live for the moment. Live for the moment tonight.
We're still live. You're supposed to hang up.
Oh.